welcome back to Marshmallow Reads. I'm Marcy, and today I'm going to rank my top 10 books that I read in June. So when I originally came up with this video idea, I thought I had read a total of 10 books in June. Nope, I counted today and it's actually 11. So I'm going to start off with an honorable mention and then rank from 10 to 1 my favorite books that I read this month, which is going to include all of the books I read this month. I was just trying to be funny, but it didn't quite work out. I'm rolling with it anyway. All right, starting with the honorable mention, Girls of Paper and Fire. It's fantasy and it's a sapphic romance, and I had high hopes for it, but I just couldn't really get into it. So the basic premise of this world that it's written in, it's like a fantasy setting. So there's the Demon King. He every year requires 8 girls to be taken from the variety of different like counties or whatever to be brought to him as concubines, courtesans, sex slaves. The main girl, Lay, she is taken from her village, from her family, into this castle to forcibly start this fancy life, and I hated it. I really did not like the entire premise of this story. They have to take lessons and prepare themselves both like bodily and mentally to please the king in a very non-consensual way. And I hated it. Like, the entire story is surrounding this. And yes, part of it is like Lay trying to find where her mother went off because she was taken by demons a few years ago. Maybe they brought her here. And then the actual romance with Lay and this other paper girl, Ren, is pretty cool. But it wasn't enough to get me to like this story. And honestly, I think I would have liked this story better if it was told through Ren's perspective, because she's a total baddie. But even still, I don't think I would have liked it. I mean, I ultimately did give it a 3, but it's not for me. I'm not going to continue the series. Maybe you'll enjoy it more than I did. Is an honorable mention. Number 10 on my list is A Week of Mondays by Jessica Brody. This one, I also gave it 3 stars. It was fun, but I did have some issues with it. The main girl, Allie, is like a basic high school girl in like normal town USA, and she's having a bad day. It's a Monday and she has so much going on today. There's an election today that she has to give a speech for. There school photos going on. I think she has like a quiz or a test going on in history. There's softball tryouts. And then there's also like the last day of the fair. And in all of that, she screws up everything. She's not having a good day. She's also dealing with the fact that the night before, she and her boyfriend had a huge fight, and she ended up throwing a gnome, like a garden gnome, at his head. That's not cool. I don't care how mad you are at your boyfriend, do not throw things at him. That is not cute. The entire day just went super poorly. And then she wakes up, getting ready for the next day, and realizing, well, she actually doesn't realize this straight away, but instead of it being Tuesday, it's that same Monday again. And it takes her way too long to realize that she's like reliving that same day again. It takes her like literally like half the day to figure it out. It's like, girl, come on. But, you know, like getting to see her slowly improve each part of her day, like by the 3rd day, she's like completely acing that history test, and she's like totally hitting it literally out of the park in the softball tryouts. She is getting better and better at getting her ex, current boyfriend, whatever, to like her more. She looks up tips from this lady who has this like male behavioral patterns PhD. What? That doesn't sound like a real degree. And Ellie literally says, they should be teaching this in school. It's way more important than chemistry. And me, a chemist, was very mad reading that sentence. Like, girl, you don't even know, but whatever. You're in high school. I'm not gonna get too mad at you. Eventually, I mean, I don't want to spoil much more. It's, you know, your time loop story. She learns lessons along the way. It's cute, it's fun, but it has its issues. I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. For number 9, we have Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. This is another time loop story. I may or may not be planning a future video based on time loop recommendations. Be on the lookout for that one. But this one is like a historical fiction time loop story. It follows this woman, Ursula, who was born in February 1910 or 1911, and she dies a lot as a child, mostly because of the influenza of 1918. And you're following this, like, you know, in the first part of the book, it's like looping back and forth, like, okay, she first is born, stillborn, and they fix that problem somehow. She doesn't do it herself because she's a literal baby. But later on, she like falls out of a window and fixes that. She does a variety of different things to try to fix the whole influenza outbreak in her house specifically. And then eventually, you know, you see more and more of her life into like teenagehood, young adulthood, and then very later on, her like later years. And it's cool. It takes place in England in like a upper middle class household. So it was nice. It gave me some Downton Abbey vibes. This isn't necessarily the type of story I read a lot, so I don't necessarily know if this book is for me. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars, but I did enjoy it, and I think other people will enjoy it more than I did. So if you think this is up your alley, I would recommend you checking it out. Yeah, I think it was fine. I think it was enjoyable. Yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. At number 8 is The Lightness by Emily Temple. So this one, it wasn't exactly what I was expecting going into, but I did end up enjoying this one. I did give it a 4 out of 5 stars. So it does have some major like cult vibes, which is what intrigued me to begin with, but not in the way I expected. So this teenage girl is going to this Buddhist, I think, or like spiritual, some new religion, retreat for the summer. In part, she's doing this to find her father, who's gone missing for like 2 years or something, and he would go to all of these retreats, specifically this one. And she was hoping to find out some information about him, but like almost immediately that storyline has dropped off, and instead she gets herself involved with some of the people in some of the teens in this camp who do some weird stuff. And I was expecting like a systematic cult, like the retreat itself was problematic, but not necessarily the case. The people that she ends up hanging out with are super obsessed with the lightness, or to me it sounds like a different form of enlightenment, but they're taking it literally. They are trying to levitate, like literally levitate themselves off of the earth. And they have a bunch of different strategies for doing this. Part of this is calorie and sleep restriction. That's a big ass red flag. That is one of the major ways that like real world cults use to control their followers and make them vulnerable to their cult ideas. So watch out for that. And it seems fine for a little while. Like, you know, they're basically doing light as a feather, stiff as a board sort of stuff. And eventually, there are a lot of sexual elements to this. Like, these are some horny teenage girls, and there is a hot young man working in the garden here, so like, I get it. But it became so much in the descriptions, like, it became like tediously sexual. So I was like kind of put off there for a while in the middle. Eventually the ending did bring me back, which is why I gave it a 4 instead of a 3. But for a while there I was like, okay, we get it, they're horny, let's move on. I don't want to give too much more away, so if that sounds good to you, check it out. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. At number 7, I have Lumberjanes Volume 5 by Noelle Stevenson. I am a huge fan of Noelle's work. I think they are a fantastic writer, a fantastic illustrator. I originally found them through Nimona, and I heard that they had this like huge like middle grade comic book series, Lumberjanes, is like, oh my god, yes, it's so cute. It's summer camp for girls and they're doing fun, spooky, supernatural stuff too. And this volume specifically, I think, starts off with one comic that is about how this group of girls first meet, and it is super cute. It's really nice to see their origins. And then the second part, the majority of this volume, is the girls out on a trip with their camp counselor, and then them like going fishing and accidentally pulling up a mermaid, and they're like, oh my god, mermaids exist. And then a bunch of other mermaids come up and are like, what are you doing in our waters, original mermaid? Because it turns out the mermaid they plucked up from the water was a band member that was kicked out of this band, and there's still some pretty harsh feelings there. So the girls take it upon themselves to try to mend this relationship, and it doesn't go according to plan, and they learn some lessons along the way. It's a very cute story, very quick read. I enjoyed it, very summery feels. I also gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. At number 6, we have Heartstopper Volume 4 by Alice Oseman. So technically this is not out. It is not going to be published until like December 2021, but the webcomic that covers this volume has recently completed, so I'm gonna count it as read. This story continues the focus on Nick and Charlie's romance, their relationship. They're still in high school, so you know it's not like super serious, but they're getting somewhat serious, you know. The Paris gang, like Nick and Charlie and their friends that they made on their Paris trip in the last volume, they are doing a beach trip, and that brings up some lovey-dovey emotions. It also brings up some mental health issues with Charlie. It's becoming more and more clear that he does have an eating disorder that he needs to start dealing with. And obviously that's hard. And Nick is doing his absolute best in trying to get him the support that he needs. So the story focuses on that a bit. And as well, Nick, dealing with his coming out with his family members that he's not super close with. And it was a very heartfelt and touching story. I also loved the parts with their friends, like the periphery characters. Very solid volume. I love this series very, very much. And I think there's only one volume left to be made. It's gonna be hard seeing the end of this, but it's been such a fun ride. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Number 5 is Shiver by Reynolds. I believe this author has like published some like short stories and stuff, but this is her debut novel. And let me tell you, holy crap, very good debut. I'm very impressed. So Shiver is like a mystery thriller, and I knew basically nothing about this story. I thought originally it was going to be a reunion, like a family reunion in this like fancy ski lodge, but no, it is a friend reunion at this fancy French snowboard lodge. I mean, I think they're skiing, but the friends themselves were at one time, 10 years ago, pro snowboarders. And some shit went down 10 years ago, and they completely split the friend group apart, and now they've been invited back to this ski lodge they seasoned at, and they don't actually know who invited them there or why, and they have to figure out what's going on before they might freeze to death. Each chapter flips between the story 10 years ago, when they're like actively competing and preparing for these snowboarding competitions on the half pipe, which is super dangerous, super technical, but also seems super fun. And you know, they are in their like early 20s, so peak physical performance, and they are just going ham, also pretty horny. And you're seeing their friendships and relationships develop, and it's all surrounding this one girl, Saskia, which is the sister of one of the people, ex-girlfriend, current girlfriend of a bunch of other people. And wow, she is a legit sociopath. Like, holy crap, she is so manipulative, and you don't ever never know if she's legitimately being friendly to you or if she's just doing that to mess with you, because, you know, it's all about competition and getting ready for these snowboarding competitions and doing whatever she can to mess with her rivals. And, you know, tensions are heating up in the past, and eventually at the end of the past storyline, she goes missing in the mountains and they don't know what happened to her. And now at the present, the rest of the group are being summoned to the deserted ski lodge for the weekend, and they think they're going to have a nice reunion, talk about old times, maybe like mend some of these burnt bridges. But instead, they're like, oh crap, none of us actually invited us here. Who did? Why? What is their purpose bringing us all together? And they're freaking out because their phones go missing. Sometimes the power and heating goes out. Their situation is getting pretty dire. So flipping back and forth between the two timelines was actually really satisfying. So even though I reached the end of one chapter and was like, oh, I need to find out more about this, but then you pick up where you left off on the other side of the timeline, and that's also at a really exciting point. So I think Reynolds did a fantastic job just continuing to build the tension up and up and up until the climax. Because you hit the climax of both timelines at the same time, and it is so satisfying and so fun to read. And because this is a very chilling story, both in temperature and in like suspense, I had so much fun reading this. It was like, for whatever reason, like the perfect summer book for me. Yeah, this was a super fun read. I highly recommend it. Check this one out. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Oh, okay, so we have 4 books left. It was really, really hard to decide each of the places for the top 4 because they're all 5 stars, including Shiver. But so it was hard. Honestly, I could have put any of these at number 1. It was just that good of a reading month for me. But next, I did put for number 4, Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Guys, my heart, like, I know this story. I know how it ends, and it still got me so hard. Like, I was crying those last chapters. So even if you know the story behind this particular Greek mythology story, oh, it is told so well. Just beautiful writing, absolutely gorgeous, really, really tugging on those heartstrings. So worth it. Like, if you have not read this, even if you're like not really into Greek mythology, read it. Read it. It's so good. It's so beautiful. This one has been out for quite a while now, and I've heard good things about it, but it wasn't until last year that I really considered reading it, because last year, 2020, was when the game Hades came out by Supergiant Games, and they are like my favorite game publishers, so I play everything they put out. And Hades, I've put almost like 100 hours into. I absolutely adore this game. Wonderful characters, wonderful storyline, really addicting gameplay. And Achilles and Patroclus are 2 characters in this game, and that's where I really learned their story. So I was like, oh my god, I need to read their prequel. So that's when I got the Song of Achilles. And it was so good. It definitely met all of my expectations and more. Like, I originally thought, I mean, this book is about the Trojan War, but not like in nitty-gritty, boring, like military detail. It really does focus on Achilles and Patroclus's relationship, but starting as childhood friends and growing into lovers, and I loved it. Very easily could have been my number 1 book in any other month, but this month was so stacked, it ended up number 4. Doesn't matter, wonderful book, please read it. And number 3, I put The Push by Ashley Audrain. Okay, so I didn't have this book on my TBR, but I saw it at the library. It was like the same trip that I picked up Shiver, and I had heard some sort of things about it, and the cover really pulled me in. I was like, okay, I'll give this a try. Oh, baby. Literal babies. No kids. No thank you. This is like if someone were to make a horror novel specifically targeted at me, this is what it would be. This is definitely giving me the Changeling vibes. We need to talk about Kevin vibes. Not exactly like those two, but very, very similar. And if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what this book is going to be like. I didn't really know. I knew like a little bit, but going into it, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. No. Like, yes, it was fun, but it was terrifying. And I could not stop reading it. Like I would be reading this while brushing my teeth. I could not put it down. So, I guess trigger warnings for like child abuse and child deaths. Yeah, that's gonna give you a decent idea of what you're getting into. I don't want to get into spoilers at all, but like the biggest takeaway, I guess, I got from this book was the massive importance of body autonomy. If someone wants to have a baby, let them. Fantastic. Good for them. Wish you the best. If someone does not want to have a baby or children ever, also great. Let them do that. Let them have that choice be made by them and not anyone else. Because when you try to force someone into motherhood or into parenthood when they absolutely don't want to do it, bad shit is gonna happen. Like, oh man. Like in part, it's a generational story, like of 4 mothers and then like the daughter, the resulting like great-granddaughter. No. No. Oh, this one was a lot. I did give it a very well-deserved 5 stars, but Jesus Christ. It was rough, but very fun. Read it if you want to. Number 2 is Ace of Spades by Faridah, Àbíké-Íyímídé. Baby, this is a new release for June. I was super excited to get my hands on it. I did the audiobook through my library. I demolished this audiobook. I think it only took me like 2 days, not even, to finish this one because I couldn't put it down. If you want a very basic idea of what this book is, I've seen it described as Gossip Girl meets Get Out, but make it black and queer, and that's a very good description. If that's all you need to go on it, go on your way. Check it out, please. So the 2 main characters that we follow are Devin and Chiamaka, and they are the only 2 black students at this ultra fancy private high school. And it doesn't have a specific setting. Like it's Faridah made it so that it could take place anywhere in the world. I think she's originally from the UK, but I very, very much imagine this taking place in like New England. And so like I said, Devin and Chiamaka are, you know, the only non-white students in this school, and they are very singled out. They don't necessarily feel it until their senior year. So even though they're the only 2 black students in the school, they don't really know each other. They're the same year, but they don't hang out in the same circles. Devin is a musician who's trying to get into Juilliard, and Chiamaka is like the super high achieving type A person who's like aiming to be the very best at everything she does. She is the head prefect in her class and is, I don't remember what school she's trying to get into, but I'm assuming she's trying to get into like all of the Ivies. And senior year starts off pretty well for them. They have a very promising future ahead of them until it starts crumbling to pieces. There are these videos that start coming out, and it's like videos and text messages sent by Aces, this like mystery person, and they're sent out to every single student's cell phones, and except for the text message or video that the person is about. So Devin and Chiamaka soon realize that they are being singled out by Aces, and some of their past is being dragged up. It has a very negative effect on their social lives, mental health, all that sort of stuff. Like their dirty secrets are being dragged out into the light of the world, and they are trying to figure out who's behind it, why, and they're gonna try to stop it. It is so fun, interesting to read because it's terrifying. Like, imagine if all this stuff was happening to you and that all your secrets were being brought up because of who you are, and they were targeting you specifically because of who you are, and it sucks. And yes, this was meant to be an exaggeration of what happens in the real world, but honestly, it does not feel that far off. Like, yeah, the like, who's behind it is an exaggeration, but is it? You'll see what I mean if you read it. Yeah, very obviously, I gave this one a 5 out of 5. Number 1 for June is On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden. This was such a surprise hit for me. Holy crap. Like, queer stories in space. I figured I was gonna at least give it a 4. Like, it was definitely up my alley, but man, what a beautiful story. Literally and figuratively, of course. Like, the art style. Holy crap. I need this in physical copy. I read it on my iPad, so like all digital, but I am absolutely going to be on the lookout for this in a store sometime soon. Like, I want to reread it. I want to have a physical copy, both for me and so I can shove it into my friends' hands and force them to read it, because it is so beautiful and it's really unique. So it follows Mia when she was a kid in high school, starting at this like all-girls school. Really, this entire story is like all girls and non-binary folk. There, I don't think, is a single man anywhere. That leaves me with some questions about how they reproduce, but like, I'm not gonna get into it, whatever. It's a fantasy, sci-fi fantasy. So everyone you meet in this book is either a woman or a non-binary person, and it follows their lives. And there are a lot of queer romances. Makes sense. In the high school timeline, Mia meets Grace and eventually become best friends, and eventually more than best friends, and it's very cute and very nice, until Grace has to go home because of a family planet-wide emergency sort of deal. And because of reasons, Mia wasn't able to say goodbye to Grace. And now it's like 5 years later, and Mia is still thinking about Grace and still regretting not being able to say goodbye, and just wants to be able to find her to settle things. But the issue is, where Grace lives is in this part of space that is out of bounds for like everyone except who lives on the planet. So any outsiders are gonna be hunted down. They're not welcoming. In this future timeline, Mia is working as this like contractor with this group of women who go to different like places and different planets to restore historical places. But the main heart of the story is about these girls, Mia and Grace, and Mia's fight to find Grace again. She's going into this not expecting to pick up where they left off 5 years ago. She is expecting just to be able to say goodbye at least. The friends that Mia makes in this contracting group is very lovely as well. Like, there's some good like female like motherly, but not necessarily motherly, like just good adult role models, and they also get really good friendships. Again, it's beautiful. I loved it. It's very queer, very, very feminist, and it's also just straight up gorgeous. Like, there are some of these panels that I just want framed on my wall. It is amazing. So yeah, I definitely recommend you pick up On a Sunbeam if you can. Even if it's digital, I think it's still worth to read. And that concludes my list. Okay, this video is long enough. I'm gonna keep this end short. If you liked this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you really liked this video, then consider subscribing to my channel. For the most part, I have been posting every Thursday, maybe with like a break here and there. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Do something nice for yourself. I will see you in the next one. Bye!